Tonight, we begin with knowing the fate of the Homestead Exemption Act in Columbia County and also the city of Grovetown. With that, let's bring in your Kennedy Payne, who joins us live from the newsroom. And I know, Kennedy, you were there at Columbia County Commissioners meeting as those votes were being cast and commissioners chose to opt out. So what is next, and how do you think residents feel at this point?
Yeah, well, Columbia County Commissioners unanimously voted to opt out of House Bill 5881. We spoke with Chairman Doug Duncan about what this means for the future of Columbia County and more specifically what this means for homeowners. A controversial bill.
We have opted out, but our focus is to come up with our own homestead floating exemption to have in place for this tax year.
Some people weren't happy about the decision.
You had a solution here that you could have adopted tonight.
This was not a good solution.
The problem is you don't want to give up power.
Doug Duncan is the Columbia County chairman. He says it wasn't an easy decision.
We just really had a deep dive. How's it going to impact Columbia County in 20 years, not what's somebody going to feel in the next 30 days. Duncan says the main thing is how this affects the county long term. We'd be in for 50 years. Who knows what'll change in the legislature before the end of this session and even next year.
And he says it matters who has control.
So we prefer to have the local control instead of state control.
He says the public meetings have been helpful.
We actually had a resident come to our second hearing. He talked about Proposition 13 in California. And basically this bill comes very close to mirroring that. It capped the property values, I believe, at 2%.
Duncan says the outcome in California is what they're trying to avoid for Columbia County homeowners.
We had someone maybe with a $200,000 home in Palisades, which is now burned, and that property value just stayed the same all these years. And basically what it did was transfer the increased cost, one that the state had to pay for local government, but then also the value of the homes went through the roof. So now a house that maybe you would buy in Montclair here in California, maybe $3 or $4 million. And Proposition 13 had a large part in that.
And he says had they opted in, it could have affected key parts of the county.
But if you remember, when the fires burned, the big outcry was the fire department was not funded. Well, that's part of the local taxes. That property tax funds the fire department. So they didn't have the money to fund their fire department. They couldn't stop the fire.
And Duncan says they plan to have their own floating homestead exemption in place by the time tax bills go out this year, which would be May.
All right. Thank you so much, Kennedy, for following this. I know this is a very complicated topic. A lot of folks still trying to understand it. And thank you so much for trying to help us understand some solutions tonight. We appreciate you. The city of Grovetown also voted to opt out of the tax exemption. This was live streamed on the city's Facebook page. The Columbia County Board of Education voted to opt out earlier this month with the understanding that leaders will create their own versions of the exemptions.